Harry's wife, loose lips. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. No, we're not discussing Harry's wife's nether regions. Instead, we're referring to the loose lips of Prince Harry, or perhaps more accurately, loose fingers. No, actually, it'd be loose lips, won't it? Because he's the one that's been spouting this shite, and somebody else has been writing it down. As you'll be aware, loose lips sink ships. That's why people during World War II were encouraged to keep the gums from flapping and keep their mouths shut. We turn to the Telegraph, and the article by Victoria Ward, Gordon Rayner and Daniel Capurro tells us Prince Harry reveals that he killed 25 people in Afghanistan. The Duke of Sussex killed 25 people during his second tour of Afghanistan, he reveals in his memoir. Prince Harry says he flew on 6 missions that resulted in the taking of human lives, something of which he is neither proud nor ashamed. He writes in his book Spare that in the heat of combat, he did not think of the 25 as people, but instead as chess pieces that had been taken off the board. Now, some of you might think, that's a rather unusual thing to say. And, of course, it is objectification. It is the case that people are trained not to think of the enemy combatants as people, in the sense of, I'm shooting at somebody who's got 2 children, or is somebody's brother, is somebody's son, that likes to go fishing, enjoys watching football, etc., because that could result in a hesitancy in the heat of combat. Instead, troops are trained to obey orders and not to focus on such matters, and therefore to think of them as chess pieces to be taken off the board is objectification, but is commensurate with a particular military mindset that would be utilised for the purposes of not dwelling on who it is you're shooting at. Naturally, if someone dwells upon the fact that the person they're shot at may well have children, enjoys the similar things to that which their aggressor enjoys, that could have a psychological impact upon the individual and possibly even endanger their own lives or those of their comrades as a consequence of hesitancy to act thereafter. It was originally the case at the Battle of Gettysburg that it was found that about 75% of the guns hadn't been fired because, quite simply, the soldiers couldn't bring themselves to shoot at another human being, and this led to an overhaul of the way that troops were trained and the way that they regarded the enemy. Returning to the article, it's the first time the 38-year-old has discussed the number of Taliban fighters he personally killed during his military service, and is likely to increase concern about his personal safety. The Duke has long been regarded as a terrorist target, not only because of his royal status, but also because of his 2 deployments to Afghanistan, which have made him a target for Islamist terrorist organisations. Last year, he took legal action over the Home Office's decision not to provide full police protection for him and his family when visiting the United Kingdom. His barrister said he does not feel safe when he is in the United Kingdom, having lost his taxpayer-funded security when he and his wife gave up royal duties. Now, naturally you might ask, given that he's so frightened, or apparently frightened, and doesn't feel safe, wouldn't it be advisable to keep his mouth shut about such matters and not go on about shooting members of the Taliban, that he should keep a low profile in that regard? Or is this an attempt to try and secure a particular status to ensure that there is taxpayer-funded security provided to him and his wife? Well, it remains to be seen. Of course, what it does bring to mind, again, is this. His wife knows that he's writing this book. Indeed, she's had heavy involvement in it, we can see that. Once again, why didn't she counsel him, as a supposedly kind and loving and empathic individual, to say, darling, should you be really writing about this? First of all, it's not a very nice thing to say about people. And secondly, it could cause problems for us. No, she didn't caution him. Why? Because she doesn't actually care about him, and she doesn't care about the people that have been killed. She just thinks that she does. All she cares about is herself and, of course, the prime aims. Once again, we are able to see that she does not have his best interests at heart, not in the slightest. The article continues. Spare has already gone on sale in Spain, where the Telegraph bought a Spanish-language copy from a bookshop. Writing about his time in Afghanistan, the prince describes watching video of each kill when he returned to base as a nose-mounted video camera on his Apache helicopter recorded each mission in full. I wouldn't put it past him to confuse his Xbox for the video from the Apache. He says that in the din and confusion of combat, he saw the insurgents he killed as baddies eliminated before they could kill goodies. Oh, for God's sake. It's a mentality of a 7-year-old, isn't it? It is not possible to kill someone if you see them as a person, he says, but the army had trained me to other them, and they had trained me well. That's an accurate observation. I made it my purpose from day one to never go to bed with any doubt whether I had done the right thing, whether I had shot at Taliban and only Taliban, without civilians in the vicinity. I wanted to return to Great Britain with all my limbs, but more than that, I wanted to get home with my conscience intact. He says that in war, soldiers do not usually know how many enemies they have killed, but in the era of Apaches and laptops, he was able to say, with exactness, how many enemy combatants I had killed, and it seemed to me essential not to be afraid of that number. So my number is 25. It's not a number that fills me with satisfaction, but nor does it embarrass me. Part of his reason for feeling no guilt about taking lives, he says, is that he never forgot being in the television room at Eton watching news coverage of the 9/11 attacks on New York, and later meeting the families of victims of the attacks on visits to America. He describes those responsible for the attacks and their sympathizers as enemies of humanity, and says fighting them was an act of vengeance for one of the worst crimes in human history. The Duke writes that the only shots he thought twice about were the ones he had not taken, and in particular being unable to help his Gurkha brothers on an occasion when they were under fire from the Taliban, and a communications failure meant he was not able to help them. He complains about military bureaucracy, detailing an occasion when he witnessed around 30 Taliban blow up a lorry and was denied permission to fire on the enemy. Prince Harry was deployed as a forward air controller in Helmand Province during his first tour of duty in 2007-2008, which was cut short when foreign news organisations breached a news blackout that had been agreed with the British media. In 2012, after learning to fly Apache helicopters, he was deployed to Camp Bastion in southern Afghanistan with the Army Air Corps, staying for 20 weeks. He said at the time that killing insurgents was part of his job, and that we fire when we have to, take a life to save a life. The Taliban said at the time that it had told its commanders in Helmand to do whatever they can to eliminate him. Security experts have said that the prince remains a top target for terrorists because of his military service, and the fact that he's chosen to reveal his personal tally is likely to increase those fears. Writing about his military training, he reveals that he suffered from trench foot during an exercise in Wales when he slept in the open and was caught in a downpour. I noticed that my feet were burning, he writes. Probably because he'd set them on fire himself, the dimwit. I sat on the floor, took off my right boot and sock, and saw that the sole of my foot was raw. Another soldier told him he would not be able to carry on, and he went to a medical station where he was told he would have to pull out of the march, which left him dejected, although I'll admit also relieved. His sergeant, however, told him he should push on, so he taped up his feet and took among the most difficult steps I've ever taken on this planet to get to the finish. Something many soldiers go through, and hardly amazing news, but he's relaying his personal experience there. At least it's not along the lines of falling on a dog bowl and having his necklace broken. My necklace was broken. But what does the army think about these disclosures? Well, a further article in the Telegraph, written by Danielle Sheridan, writes, Prince Harry accused of betraying the military and endangering serving soldiers after Taliban killed claim. Prince Harry has been accused of betraying the military and putting serving British soldiers and the greater public at risk after claiming to have killed 25 Taliban insurgents. Colonel Richard Kemp, a former commander of British forces in Afghanistan, warned jihadists would exploit the Duke of Sussex's badly judged comments, where he revealed how many people he killed while on tour in Afghanistan. Colonel Kemp told The Telegraph his words will be fed into jihadist propaganda to carry out attacks against the United Kingdom. These comments feed into propaganda and help the jihadists to recruit and radicalise people to carry out attacks against British civilians and soldiers, Colonel Kemp said. Colonel Tim Collins, who gave an inspirational battle speech on the eve of the 2003 Iraq invasion, accused the Duke of betraying the military in the same way he has betrayed his family. He said, "I think he's completely naive. There's no understanding of what he's doing and what he has done. The military has always embraced him into the family, no matter what has gone on before. He's now betrayed that trust in the same way he's betrayed his birth family." Notice as well that Harry hadn't betrayed the army, hadn't betrayed his family, until somebody came along, until somebody started to pour ideas in his ear, until somebody manipulated him to form a different view and to drag him into the cult of Harry's wife. The article continues. Colonel Collins added, amongst his assertions is a claim that he killed 25 people in Afghanistan. That's not how you behave in the army. It's not how we think. He has badly let the side down. We don't do notches on the rifle, but we never did. Tobias Ellwood, the chairman of the Commons Defence Select Committee and a former British Army captain, also stressed the security implications that Prince Harry's kill count could have. He said, from a security perspective, there is the unwritten assumption that nobody publicly discusses kill counts for the principal reason that it can have security repercussions. There should be no pride taken in scalps accumulated in any battles. Colonel Kemp added that Prince Harry's allegations would further give ammunition to lawyers who want to drag British soldiers in front of a court accused of war crimes. The Taliban, who regained control of Afghanistan in August 2021, responded to the Duke's claims in a statement on Friday. Khalid Zadran, the Taliban's police spokesman in Kabul, said, "The perpetrators of such crimes will one day be brought to the international court, and criminals like Harry, who proudly confess their crimes, will be brought to the court table in front of the international community." The Duke has long been regarded as a terrorist target because of his Afghan deployments. Colonel Kemp added, "There's nothing to be ashamed of, but he's worried about his personal security, and comments like that make it worse for him." While stationed at Camp Bastion, he served with 662 Squadron, 3 Regiment, Army Air Corps. The Duke also wrote that it was impossible to kill someone if you see them as a person, and the Army trained me to other them, and they trained me well. Colonel Collins, in an interview with Forces News, said Prince Harry's latest revelations are clearly a tragic money-making scam to fund the lifestyle he can't afford and someone else has chosen. Colonel Collins there seeing straight through to the matter in the usual decisive way of many members of the British military, identifying that Harry is just doing it to make money and the lifestyle has been chosen by somebody else, i.e. Harry's wife. The colonel added, "The British Army was deployed to Afghanistan to assist the lawful government and the benighted people, not to kill them. We lost people dead and insurgents also died, as did some innocents caught in the conflict. But that was a regrettable consequence of a lawful intervention with the best intentions. He has chosen a path that is alien to us in the UK and the Commonwealth, pursuing US identity politics and casting slurs or racism around where none exists in any manner comparable to the USA. You get after them, Colonel Collins. Stick it to them. I wonder whose path he has chosen. In the end, I see only disappointment and misery in his pursuit of riches he does not need, and his rejection of family and comradely love that he badly needs." The Duke's memoirs have gone down badly among the wider military community. Ben McBean, the double amputee who inspired the Duke's Invictus Games, tweeted, "Love you #Prince Harry, but you need to shut up. Makes you wonder the people he's hanging around with. If it was good people, somebody by now would have told him to stop." Point that I made in parts past him about the fact that he's badly advised, and of course he's been absorbed into the folie de, the cult of Harry's wife, and she is letting him do this as she hangs him out to dry. Senior defence sources also told the Telegraph that while it was normal for soldiers to analyse who they had shot in order to write a post-action report, it's less normal to then talk about it. Lord Hutton of Furness, who served as Defence Secretary from 2008 to 2009, said that speaking about how many people he'd killed diminishes him. He told LBC Radio, "I think it's not what we expect from someone who has held the positions of authority and responsibility that he has previously occupied. I think it's a very serious mistake on his part. General Sir Richard Barrons, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff, also told LBC, "My view is that you don't talk about these things. These are things that happen on the battlefield and there's no great advantage in saying anything public." Meanwhile, Peter Leahy, the former Chief of the Australian Army, said, "By skiting about his skills, he's going against a long line of tradition that says professional soldiers don't talk about these things. People who are closely involved in the events know what's happened, and it's not something you should be excessively proud of, even though you've done it in the pursuit of national security. It's something that some people suffer from, the fact that you've been involved in killing people on the battlefield, and it can revisit them later on." A Ministry of Defence spokesman said, "We do not comment on operational details for security reasons." On Friday, it was reported Prince Harry was allowed to leave his Apache helicopter base after a random drugs test was announced in May 2011. This comes after he revealed in the memoir that he had taken drugs in the past. The RAF Watterson base in Suffolk was secured by armed guards, but the Duke was granted permission to return to London on urgent business, according to The Sun. However, the paper reported that he'd only just come back from London. There is no suggestion that Prince Harry took any drugs while in the armed forces, which has a zero-tolerance policy towards drugs. More idiocy from Harry in making this observation. Whilst he thinks he's just talking about it in a matter-of-fact manner, he would know full well that this is not something that he ought to speak about. But once again, his low cognitive function and the fact that he has been encouraged, persuaded, urged to talk about such matters. And of course, as Colonel Tim Collins has identified, that he's under the spell of somebody else and he's chosen a particular lifestyle, which is actually alien to all of the things that he stood before. When Harry wakes up, and he will wake up at some future point, he'll be horrified at what he's done whilst he's in the cult. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.